Welcome to the Double Stop. I'm Brian Sword. This week, I've got the return of Greg Chaisson. I first had him on way back in episode 25, so if you haven't heard that, I suggest you go back and check it out as well. This episode picks up pretty much exactly where we left off last time, so let's get right to it. Here's my conversation with Greg Chaisson. The last time we talked, it was just before you reconnected with Jake and started playing shows with him. In fact,
that has been a while, huh?
It has been a while. Yeah, it's been almost 10 years.
Well, that had been 2014.
That's right. So when we finished the interview, you kind of gave me a hint off the record that maybe something was coming up that would be exciting. And obviously that was you joining Red Dragon Cartel to do that tour.
Yep.
So why don't you start with how that all came about?
Well, Jake had done the record, and over the course, we kind of reconnected when he kind of got back in the public eye and had been just talking about things in general. Him and his future wife, now wife Amy, came to Phoenix to watch spring training baseball, of all things. And we went out, we took them out to breakfast before they drove back to Vegas. And he said, "Do you want to hear the record?" And he had just finished the first Red Dragon record, and I listened to it, and I thought it was cool. And that he kind of left it at that. Well, then they went on tour in 2014, I believe, and or actually 2013, I think. They had went on some tours, and he wasn't happy with the guy playing bass on it. He's not really a bass player. Ron, I can't remember his last name. And there was also some personal stuff between them that I don't even know what it was. But so out of the blue, one night he calls me, which is very odd because Jake doesn't call. He doesn't like talking on the phone. Neither do I. And so he, instead of texting me, he called me and said, "Hey, do you have time to talk?" And so I was out working at night. I was driving a truck at night for Hurley Trucking out here. And so we ended up chatting for a couple hours, and then the crux of the conversation was that he didn't like the bass player. They were going to be playing a show in Phoenix or in Tempe coming up that March, which was in a couple months. And would I be interested in doing this show? And I was like, okay, yeah, sure. So he sent me the set list. It had some Red Dragon Cartel on it. It had some Aussie. It also had some Badlands. So I learned the stuff. Him and his band came out to play a couple days before the first show of the tour was at this place, the Marquee here. And I found a place for us to rehearse. We hadn't played together since like the early 90s. And we got together, and it was just like yesterday. It was like him and I had been jamming together all along. And the drummer was cool. The singer Darren was cool. Jonas Fairley was the drummer. It was a cool deal. I did the show. I had a great time. And after the show, the next day, they took me to dinner, and they said, "Okay, we want you to join the band. Are you interested in being in the band?" And he said that they did the rehearsal and the gig. He wanted to make sure I could still play, and I guess I don't blame him. We hadn't played together in so long. You want to know if I still had the same line of baloney that I was always peddling way back then. And so I said, well, I had just agreed I was working at a place called Arizona World of Baseball, and I worked there giving little kids baseball lessons, and I ran all their camps. So they have an 11-week summer camp that they do, and I had agreed to do it. And so I said, I'll tell you what, if you still want me to, I got to do the summer camp. I gave my word that I'd do it. And a lot of it, it's 50, 60 kids a day. And a lot of it depended on me being there. I was real popular as a coach there. And I get along really good with little kids because I have the same weird sense of humor they do. And I said, if you still want someone after August, call me. And so after their last show and that they had done, and after the date that we had come up with, he called me and said, "We still want you to do it. We're not happy. Do you want to do it?" And I said, "Yeah, I'll do it." So went to Vegas and rehearsed for a couple weeks and did some shows in Texas and California and Vegas. It was in the winter time. First shows were in October. Took a break at Thanksgiving, then went back out to the east side, New York and Jersey and Detroit, Chicago, Pittsburgh, all that stuff. And it was snowing, Toronto, and I hadn't been in snow in a long time. And did all the shows, and I had a really good time. I enjoyed being in the band. Like I said, playing with Jake was just like, it was just like perfect, just like lockstep all the time. And I enjoyed playing with the drummer and the singer, and the response to the shows were really good. And so as far as I was concerned, I was going to stay in the band. The plan was for Jake and I to do this till we were too old and we were going to retire eventually and be in a nursing home together, sitting in rocking chairs playing blues songs. That was always our joke. And as we get closer to that, I don't know how much of a joke it actually was. Maybe it was true. So I did that and was going to stay in the band. Now, one of the reasons I did it is because my kids had never seen me play in that setting. They'd seen me playing cover bands and that kind of stuff, but they'd never seen me on a national or international level. My kids weren't born when I was in Badlands. And so I wanted them to be able to kind of experience that. I didn't realize what a big deal it would be. It turned out to be a lot bigger deal than I certainly thought it was going to be. And my kids got to enjoy that, and that made it worth it to me.
Like, certainly from a fan perspective, it was massive. Massive.
I had no clue. It didn't even dawn on me. Jake and Greg back together again. I didn't think that it would be, I thought it would be like a minor footnote sort of thing. And even Jake was saying, this is a lot more intense than he would joke around and he'd say, maybe we should call it Jake and Greg's Red Dragon Cartel. And I just laughed and made a joke out of it. But at one point my son said, hey Dad, did you know you're trending? And I said, what does that mean? And he said, it means you're in the top 100 news stories nationwide. And don't mind me, I'm at my store right now. So if the doorbell rings, I look and see what it is. We were in the top 100 news stories nationwide. And I thought, how can that even be possible? And sure enough, we were. I mean, Jake, we were on tour and Jake said, hey, I'm going to go do Eddie Trunk's show, radio show. And he wants you to go. And I went, really? And so we both went, and even he was making a big deal of it, and I just it never dawned on me that people would care that much. And I guess, I misjudged what it would be because that's the closest to a Badlands sort of reunion you're going to get. I mean, there's never going to be one with Eric, I don't think, and I don't think there'll ever be one with Jake. So just having me, with Jeff. So having me and Jake together, which was half of Badlands, and we were in it the whole time. Him and I were the only two that stayed in it from inception till, we finally went our separate ways. So I guess I misjudged how big it would be, and it certainly was. I appreciated the fact that people really got into it and still do. I mean, it put me back on the map in a big way when I wasn't even trying to get on the map. But it kind of made me relevant again after years of spending many years trying to be invisible about my music career. All of a sudden, I'm like right back on top of it, and it was pretty gratifying.
And that's the thing about Badlands is, like, they never had the success that we expected, but in terms of a cult band, like, they're bigger now than ever. Like, guitar players love Badlands. So to have you back with Jake was huge. People were really getting off on it, but so was I. I mean, to be able to play some of those Badlands songs again, and it's funny because I had to relearn how to play my bass lines. It'd been so long since I'd even considered doing it. I had to relearn how to do it, and then playing the Aussie stuff was cool, and playing the Red Dragon Cartel stuff, I enjoyed the stuff that we did. So, but to watch people in the audiences that we played at, their reaction to it was pretty interesting. It was like they were reliving 1990 over
again, and that's pretty cool. You don't get a second bite at the apple that way that much, and like I said, I don't think either one of us gauged the reaction the way it would be.
As you said, the plan was to play with Jake until you were too old to play. And that's not how things worked out. Now, I don't know how comfortable you are sharing the full details, but
with it. So it's 2015, and we're getting ready to go on tour. And they got a whole tour booked from like April to end of October, including stuff in Japan, and I believe there's some European stuff in there. I don't remember. While I was on tour, before I went on tour with them, the summer of 2014, I started having like a sore throat and an earache that I just kind of gauged as, allergies or sinus infection. And that's what it was diagnosed as. It was never, no one ever said, hey, you might have this problem. Well, when we went on tour, and I'm kind of a health nut. I don't drink, I don't smoke. I'm a jock that happens to play bass in a band. And all of a sudden, I'm sick while we're on the road. And I just kind of attributed to the fact that it was super cold out, it was snowing and winter and blah, blah, blah. And I'm from Arizona. I have thin blood. I didn't have that thick Canadian blood I was born with anymore. And all of a sudden, there's twice I passed out coming off stage, completely delirious. We were playing in New Jersey, and I came off stage, and I was frantically looking for my wedding ring in the dressing room, which was on my finger. And I actually just fell down on the ground, and they're all looking at me like, what the hell is wrong with him? Well, apparently I had cancer and didn't know it at the time. So, fast forward to 2015, we're getting ready to go on tour, and I still don't feel very good. And all of a sudden, my lymph nodes on this side started swelling up. And so I knew I had something wrong with me, and I went to the doctor, and they did a needle biopsy, and it turned out to be cancer. Well, right when I knew that was going to happen, I called Jake up, and I said, hey, look, I can't do the tour. I got other stuff I got to do. And he was pissed. And he said, I thought we were going to do this. I said, well, I can't do it. Well, I didn't want to, I thought I might have cancer, but it wasn't diagnosed 100% yet. They had the internet, go figure. And I did a little research on there. And so I got the actual diagnosis. I had stage 4 squamous cell sarcoma on my tongue. I had a spot on my tongue the size of a dime on the back of my tongue, as hard as a dime. And I knew that couldn't be right. So I called him up and said, hey, a couple weeks later, when I was completely diagnosed and they were getting ready to do this surgery to take out all my lymph nodes, and I said, I just want to let you know that I have cancer. And he said, are you kidding? And I said, no. I said, even I wouldn't kid about that, and I'll kid about just about anything. And so he hung up. And then he sent me a message later, and he said, this is for sure, right? And I said, yeah, I'm going to the hospital here in a day. And they're gonna take out my lymph nodes, and they got to put you under anesthesia, so you never know what's gonna happen then. And then I'm gonna have a bunch of radiation, 40 plus doses of radiation and chemo, and at this point they had given me between 8 and 11 months to live. And as much as I like playing in the band with Jake, if I had not got diagnosed when I did, I would have waited till the end of the tour in October. And they had only given me till the spring of 2016. They said, you're going to probably die then. And I'm like, I can't die. My daughter's in high school. I can't be checking out while she's a sophomore in high school. So he was cool about it. And at that point, he had gotten Anthony. And, of course, he was going through the whole singer, Jakey Lee's carousel of random singers. And so he had other stuff on his mind besides that. But he was there for me as a friend and as a brother, checking on what's going on with me and doing the whole cancer thing. And he said, why didn't you tell me right off the bat? And I said, because I wasn't sure. And I didn't want to say, hey, I might have cancer, so I might not be able to go on the road. I was pretty sure I had cancer, but I just needed to get diagnosed correctly. And I had 43 doses of radiation, 15 chemos. You can only have 44 doses of radiation, so I had one less than you could have. And I went from being a big, healthy 195 buffed out dude to 121 pounds in 5 months. I mean, I couldn't walk from here to the front of my store. And but it was the only choice. I mean, it's the only way that was going to save my life. And, you know, Anthony became the bass player, and they're good friends, and he does a really good job with it. And I couldn't wish for anybody better to take my spot in there. And it's funny because when I would run in, Anthony, he'd go, "I hate you." And I'd say, "Why?" "I gotta play those damn songs. How do you come up with those bass lines? Where do those come from? I can't think like that." And we would just laugh. And then I would see him play them, and he did an excellent job. So he did a really good job with it. Of course, I wished I was still doing it, but life happens.
Yeah, I saw when it all happened, you posted some pictures on Facebook, and you're a buff guy, and you were tiny. Like, it was, wow. I kind of was taken aback by it.
The funny part is my bicep was the same width as my wrist by the time I got done. So, I mean, there's not a lot of muscle around your wrist, and that's what my arm looked like all the way up, you know, from a 195-pound guy to a 121-pound guy. And I saw Jake and his wife a couple years later, and she said, "Man, you're still too skinny." And I said, "I know, I'm trying to put it on, but, you know, at my age, it's hard to gain, you know, as much as I work out and all the stuff I do, it's hard to put on muscle. I'm old." Damn it, Ryan, I'm old.
Yeah, you are.
Thanks. You're fired.
Okay, so you recover. Mm-hmm. When do you start playing bass again and start thinking about getting back into bands?
Well, I had a band kind of on hold, sort of, called Kings of Dust. And there were different guys in it, in and out, but it was just me and the two guys that were the continual members were me and the singer. And so I told him, "Look, I'll probably want to do this at some point, but I don't know when that'll be." So when I got done my treatment, he would call me like once a week. "Are you ready yet?" And I'd go, "No, I'm not ready yet." And then at some point, a few months later, someone on the internet said, you know, Chaisson's going to do this Kings of Dust thing. And a local drummer here, who shall remain nameless, made a comment saying, "Oh, he's been trying to float that turd for years. It's never going to happen." So then I called up the singer and I said, "I'm ready now." So inadvertently, his comment spurred me to, you know, getting back on the horse or the bicycle or whatever it is, and, you know, kind of going forward. But, you know, when you lose that amount of weight in a short period of time, and for all of my brethren and sisters that have had cancer treatment, it ain't for sissies. And cancer in your mouth is a whole other difficulty. I lost so much weight because everything tasted like soap or dirt. So you don't want to eat anything. So my wife was so afraid I was going to stroke out from losing so much weight. I'll tell you a funny story. So I used to have to go every Tuesday and get weighed. And they said, if you get down below 139 pounds, you got to get a feeding tube, and we're going to put a port in you. And I would never let them put the port in me. I just, you know, mainline it. Give me the chemo right in the arm. And they'd say, "That's the hard way." And I'd say, "It's the normal way." And so when I would go in, I knew I was less than 139. So I would put like a couple rolls of quarters in each pocket, and two of those little weights that weigh like 2.5 pounds each, I'd put them in my pocket and wear my motorcycle boots, and I'd get on the scale on Tuesday and go, "Oh, wow, great, 143, good job." And then I'd go home and take that stuff out and drink my 3 bottles of Boost and eat my Jell-O for a meal. You want to know how people say, "How'd you lose so much weight?" You don't want to know how I lost that weight. I starved myself to death. I mean, almost to death. So it was you know, when you said you saw me, I was actually a little bigger then than I started working out as soon as I got done my treatment, and I went to see my doctor after 2 weeks, and I was actually less. He looks at me, he goes, "Are you working out?" I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Stop. You're burning off everything you have left. You got to gain some weight first before you can work out, because you're going to turned into nothing, and I was already almost nothing. So yeah. So anyway, Kings of Dust. Sorry. So I found a drummer that I liked, Jimmy Taft, and then I found a guitar player, Ryan McKay, right here with me. Go ahead, Ryan. This is Ryan.
Yeah, he found me.
Found him under a rock. Farther. There's Ryan.
Hey, Ryan.
And so we got together, and we had some existing material written. A guitar player that started the band that I started it with, named Mike Petruno, really good guitar player, and the drummer, Donnie Fargo. They had both kind of went by the wayside for their own personal reasons. And since the singer and I wanted to keep it going, I got a drummer named Jimmy Taft. I got Ryan. We went in and recorded a record, and the record came out, and we got, quite a buzz from it. Everyone seemed to like it, and the fact that I had beaten cancer probably helped promote that a little bit. So, and then I did that for a while. And your next question is?
Well, I was going to comment on the record because I really like the record. It's really good, and I really like the singer. It's Michael Beck, right?
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't do the vocal gymnastics like Glenn Hughes, but I hear a tone of Glenn Hughes in his voice that I think works really good because it's kind of Badlands-esque and a little Glenn Hughes type vocal on top. It works really well.
It's funny because I don't think anyone can do the vocal gymnastics that Glenn Hughes does still.
I know, he's not from this planet, but I'm talking tone.
You're going, how come some of these bands have to tune down 3 steps to go play live, and Hughes is having them tune up 2 steps? I mean, he's hitting notes that he hit when he was in Deep Purple or Trapeze, and it's like, and I know Glenn, he's a really good dude, but he's some kind of freak that way, that he can still sing like that. But I mean, when I listened to that record, and Beck's favorite vocalist was David Lee Roth, and I'm not talking David Lee Roth recently, but it's funny now when I listen to Van Halen, especially the last Van Halen album, the one that Different Kind of Truth, I can really hear some of Beck's phrasing, and some of that does sound like Van Halen to me. I don't hear Glenn Hughes in there. I don't hear Coverdale. I don't hear Ray. I mean, the music has a certain Badlands bent to it because that's kind of how I write. And even if I'm writing with Mike Petruno, that comes out. If I'm writing with Ryan, it still comes out. And both of those guys also are very versed in the 70s. And so when I did that record and then the subsequent Atomic Kings record, we were not shy about wearing our influences on our sleeves. And so, and of course, Badlands is such a huge part of my life. I didn't intentionally try to write anything in the style of Badlands. It's just that the style that Jake wrote, who was the main writer in Badlands, and the style that I write, the stuff that we like, comes from the same kind of influences. And I think that's why it comes out that way. It's not like, let's make a Badlands record. It's like, let's make a record. It's probably going to have some of the same influences that we had when we were in Badlands, and it does, intentionally. And I'm happy with how how that record turned out. I'm getting ahead of myself. But I'm happy with how the Kings of Dust record, there's things I don't like about it. It's got a god-awful drum sound, and that was just because of the studio we did it in. That's the drum sound they get there. And there's too many songs on it. Because it was done over the period, we wrote stuff for over a period of like 6 or 7 years at that point. There were a lot of stuff. We had a lot of different material, even more than that Beck really was insistent that we add all these songs to the point of 13 songs, and they're not short. They're 4 or 5 minutes or longer. And so if I was doing it over again, I would probably cut some of the songs off. There's for sure 2 songs I would take off of there for sure. And I would probably do some creative producer stuff and make some of those songs shorter. And Ryan and I only wrote 1 song together on that record, and Ryan's like my main songwriting foil here. So most of that other stuff was either written by me or me and Mike Petruno. And oddly enough, my favorite song on that record is, what's the name of it? I can't remember.
What's your favorite song?
Yeah, That's Me.
Oh.
And that's the song written by me and Ryan, and I really like that song. So, I mean, it was really good for what it was. It kind of showed that I was still alive and kicking and marginally viable and relevant. And it just kind of allowed me to go forward with the guys into whatever direction we wanted to go in.
Now, what's the difference in working with Jake versus Ryan? The dynamics of that?
Jake's much better looking.
Wait, hang on. Oh yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Fair.
Well, here's the thing that my two favorite guitar players I've ever worked with, and actually went and played live with, are probably, I'm going to say three. My three favorite guitar players, and they have some similarities, would be Jake, Ryan, and Mike Petruno, who was originally in Kings of Dust. And here's one of the reasons why, is they all are brilliant rhythm players. And they really spend a lot of time on the rhythm aspect of it. Yeah, they can solo and do all that stuff, but the foundation of what they play from a rhythm perspective is very important when you're going to play that kind of music. It's not shredder music, or it's not jazz or anything like that. It's got to have a strong rhythm foundation, and so their rhythm guitar style fits really good with my I have a fairly busy melodic, musical, whatever it is, bass style, and so without a really strong rhythm guitar, my style wouldn't actually work. So that's really important. They're all great listeners. And the thing about all three of them is that with Jake and I, back in the day, we never discussed what my part was going to be. He would play what his part is, and I would play my part, and it always just fit together 95% of the time. It just fit together just like we had talked about it, and we never would. We would be rehearsing at the studio, at the rehearsal place. He would be writing something. I would throw my part in there. It would fit. Very seldom did he say, I don't really like that. It would just be, he'd kind of go, okay, yeah, it was just like it was supposed to be that way. And that's the same kind of thing I have with Ryan and I had with Mike Petruno, was that it's kind of an unspoken Vulcan mind meld sort of like thing going on there, where we all just know where we're supposed to be. I don't get in anyone's way. They don't get in my way. They allow me to create my part. I allow them to create their part. And that is not something that doesn't happen all the time. I mean, I've been playing 53 years, 54 years. I'm talking about three guys that I actually had that sort of chemistry with, and from an original perspective. And now they all can solo, and Jake is in his own world. Jake does stuff that only Jake does. And I mean, he's a genius from that perspective. And he understands what he's doing, why he's doing it, where he's going to do it, how long he's going to do it. And there's always a reason for it. And to be able to play at that level and really he has his own style. I mean, you can look at other guys and they all Jake plus his influencers are so varied. So when you're listening to what Jake's playing, it's coming from Jake land, and no one else would think of it. No one else could do it that way. No one else has the capability of doing it that way. And that's one of the interesting things about him. The other thing about Jake is he can play any style. You want to hear Eddie Van Halen tapping? No problem. He could come up with it. You want to hear Yngwie? Jake one day went home from rehearsal. Someone was talking about Yngwie. Came back the next day rehearsing. He did a bunch of Yngwie solos. He figured them out that night. Figured out the style that he played. Could play it. We wanted banjo on a record. Jake went home, figured out how to play banjo, mandolin, whatever it is. You want to hear jazz. You want to hear funk. You want to hear fusion. You want to hear ragtime, blues, rock, metal. He can play all of it, and that's not a simple. It's not a simple thing. Ryan played in a 10-piece horn band, and so he understands the concept of less is more and the concept of how to fit things together. So when we're arranging stuff, it's very much like I'm dealing with Jake, and it just really works good because he understands a lot of different styles of music as well. And that's important if you're going to do something like Kings of Dust or Atomic Kings or whatever I do in the future. It'll be, the music you won't be able to stamp it. You won't be able to give it a category other than it's 70s style rock. And I have to have someone with me that understands the concept of what I'm thinking. I think Jake likes to have someone with him that understands that concept, that unspoken word of here's what we're doing. It's just kind of like it's meant to be. And that's one of the fun parts about being in a band, is that creating something out of nothing and making it sound like it was supposed to be that way. If you listen to Kings of Dust or my other band I had with Ryan, Atomic Kings, those songs are 4 to 6 minutes long. There's a lot of moving parts in it, and it sounds like it was supposed to be written that way. Well, I can't possibly hear that any other way. You're listening to like I Got Mine or the funk song or any of that stuff. Escape, Take My Hand. Take My Hand be a great example. Out of the blue, Take My Hand, it goes into a boogie, that fits perfectly. Well, how can that even be? I mean, when we discussed it, Ryan and I wrote the Take My Hand, we wrote the song, and I kept saying, I really want to put this boogie thing in here. Like if Motorhead was doing ZZ Top, I want to put this in here, and we'd work it up, right? And I'd go, yeah, sounds great. And then I'd get home and not listen to it, and I'd go, I don't know, I think I'm ruining this song, because we had this really good riff and verse and chorus and bridge and all this stuff really worked really good. And I think I'm ruining this. Then we'd play it and I'd go, no, that actually sounds like it's supposed to be there. So we kind of came up with the idea of doing it. And when you listen to it, you're thinking, well, of course it goes that way. It couldn't possibly be any other way. That must be the way they planned it. It's just crazy that way. So
the name change to Atomic Kings, what led that? Is that a whole separate band, or did you just decide to change the name?
What happened is Michael Beck, who at the time was one of my best friends, he, out of the blue, he joined another band, another original band that was heavier than what we were doing, which is fine, except we didn't know about it. So he's in this band for like 4 months, and a guy comes in my store here, and we're talking, and this guy's talking about wanting to manage us. And I'm like, yeah, I'd be interested. And he goes, do you have a problem with me managing your singers, Michael Beck's other band? And I'm going, Michael Beck who? He goes, your singer. And Ryan was at the store with me that day. He works at the store with me. And I looked at him and I said, is there another Michael Beck?
Yeah, what is he talking about?
And Ryan's going, are you talking about our Michael Beck? And he goes, yeah. He goes, I got this other band, something, murder somebody, the machine or whatever, and he's the singer in it. And I said, and so he started showing me pictures of the photo shoot and them rehearsing and a bio, and they're doing a couple shows in Dallas, and I'm like, what the hell? So I went and called Beck up, and I was pretty pissed, and I said, he's like, hey. And I said, when were you going to tell me about this other band? I said, well, let me help you with it. You're fired. And you can't fire me. Well, just did. And so he was unhappy. We were unhappy. I mean, if he wanted to be in another band, he should have been in another band. I wouldn't have cared. You should have told us about it. You're the voice. I'm not the voice of Kings of Dust at that point. I'm the bass player. So you're hearing the guitarist and the vocalist. That's the selling point of the band. It's not, I can't think of a band where the bass player is the lead guy, but that kind of thing. And so it just turned into this very contentious, unfriendly, we're not friends anymore. He was very angry. We were angry, blah, blah, blah. Come to find out that I had met another singer just trying to do a cover band, and that was Ken Ronk. And so when these guys said, well, who are we going to get to sing? I said, Ken Ronk. I didn't even bother asking Ken Ronk. And Jimmy, the drummer, actually knew Ken. And so he came down, I called him up. He wanted to come down. He auditioned. We really liked what he did. We liked his voice. We were kind of changing the direction. We were trying to change the direction of Kings and Dust to something a little more soulful, a little bit more bluesier, that sort of thing. And so Ken's voice fit in with that slight direction change. And so at the time, we were toying with the idea of changing the name. And so I actually came up with the Atomic Kings. We had a couple other names, and that way we could keep the Kings part of it, which I liked, and I always liked the Atomic part of it as well. And so, and people could relate maybe to the fact that we were keeping the Dust. It was Kings of Dust, now we're Atomic Kings, blah, blah, blah. And Beck went off, nothing against him. He started his own band, and he's doing his own thing, and he's happy with it. And I'm happy for him that he's getting the notoriety that he wanted. He's the main guy. And to me, it's always about the band. It's not about just what I have to say. As a matter of fact, normally when I do interviews, I want the other guys to be involved because everyone kind of knows my story. They know where I come from. They know what I did before, what I did after, blah, blah, blah. And they might not know everything that Ryan has done or everything that Jimmy or Ken had done. And so, and the other thing with Atomic Kings is that I didn't really want to be compared to Kings of Dust. I didn't want Ken to be compared with the previous singer because I do think Michael sings really good on that record. I think it's his finest work. So I wanted something separate, but with just maybe 2 degrees of separation from what it was. And
if I can jump in,
yes,
the other thing that's nice about the name change between Kings of Dust and Atomic Kings is that the Kings of Dust record is really kind of done by committee. There's the aforementioned Mike Petruno, great player. There's another guitar player on there.
Michael Arms.
There's another drummer on there, Donnie Fargo, right?
Donnie Fargo.
So there's a lot. The sessions, like he said, went on for so long. So really, it was nice, like for me personally, because I was almost like a ringer on the Kings of Dust record, although Greg and I did begin to write during that period, I was almost like a hired gun for that project. So when we sat down in earnest to begin writing the next record, and then we went through all the personnel changes and stuff, I thought a name change was appropriate. I was for it because it's like, well, this is the first time it's just going to be an insular band, 4 people, and it's not like done by a number of players. So it made sense to me, like to make the name change and sort of draw this sort of line in the sand between that was then, this is actually the core group of guys that we're using now as writers and performers on the record. There's nobody outside of the 4 of us making this record.
Kind of like we were in control of our own destiny without any secondhand help or anything like that. I mean, like I said, I like what we did in Kings of Dust. I like what we did in Atomic Kings better because Ryan and I wrote all that music short of Jimmy's page. And I like the music that Ryan and I write. And it just seemed like just a really good progression forward. And like I said, there's a relationship there between the two, but it's got enough separation that it stands on its own as well.
And what was the writing process for the record? Was it you bringing in riffs, he's bringing in riffs, or you jamming it out together? How did that all come together?
Well, Ryan and I worked together in the store, so a lot of times I would come in with a riff, and I'd say I got a new idea for a song, and we'd sit over by an amp, and we'd plug in, and I'd show it to him, and then he would like it. We would work it out a little bit here in the store, and then in rehearsal, we would probably have 90% of the parts already figured out, and then we would show it to the singer and the drummer, and they would add. Ken would start writing to it, and Jimmy would start coming up with his drum parts, and conversely, it would be Ryan showing me something. Like, for example, Take My Hand's a good example. He had some parts. He said, I have this. We worked out some of it here in the store. I wrote a couple parts to it. Then we showed it in rehearsal. And then we kind of arranged it, added all the other finishing touches to it. So it was always either him or I. Now, Jimmy's Page was an acoustic bit that Jimmy had that we knew he had. He'd played it for me, and I said, we should just use this as an intro on a song on this record. And oddly enough, Jimmy ended up even playing it on the record. He played the acoustic guitar on his own song. But musically, it's pretty much whatever Ryan and I would come up with. Whoever had an idea, and we'd come in to work, he'd show me or I'd show him, and then if we liked it, we'd play it in rehearsal, and I'd say, anyone think there's anything here? Yeah, we really like it. That's the good thing about Ken and Jimmy, is they always liked everything we wrote. No matter what we wrote, this is great, it's the best song ever.
We can't be that good, Greg.
Yeah, we can.
Ryan, I have a question for you if I can.
Sure.
Greg is a very distinctive bass player, a lot of interesting notes, a lot of notes, and a very distinctive tone, very aggressive. So what's your experience working like him? Because I'm sure he's different than other bass players you've played with.
Yeah, you're right. He's a very busy bass player, but that's cool. I don't mind that. We do a pretty good job in sort of weaving our parts kind of around each other, and that comes from really paying attention to what one another is doing. So I'm kind of listening to him and Jimmy on the drums, and I'm trying to kind of find where I can kind of put my stuff in there. So it's sort of I think for all of us, the guys that are, drums, bass, and guitar, like it's kind of, you have to approach it as sort of a selfless act where the better part is all three of us, and it's the whole, not the parts. So I'm always listening and making sure I got a place to put my ideas in there. So I don't need as much space, right? I'm not playing a whole bunch of notes. I'm not very busy because I've got Greg and Jimmy, so I'm always listening to those guys and picking my spots. And when there's a time for me to kind of play a fill that might help Ken out or something like that on the vocals, I can kind of throw that in, So yeah, it's just, it really comes down to listening and being somewhat selfless in the creation of it.
The thing about the band is I knew what Jimmy's style was, and I wanted him to be able to play his style. I wanted a drummer that could do what Jimmy does. And I wanted a guitar player that could do. I had seen Ryan play before we'd even met, and I immediately liked his style, his presence, the whole 9 yards. And when I was looking for a guitarist, I actually called a friend of mine, Steve Conley, and I said, hey, there was this one guitar player that just moved here from Illinois or Indiana or somewhere, and I seen him playing with the singer Scott Hammond and a really good guitar player, blonde guy, played a white Strat. He goes, oh, Ryan McKay. I said, yeah, okay. Does he still live here? And he said, yeah. I said, can you give me his number? And he gives me a number, and I call him up, and Ryan says we had previously met, but I don't remember it from a specific time. And
I made a great impression.
Yeah, he's like, I'm Ryan McKay, get out of my face, kid. And so I said, hey, I got this thing, very guitar-oriented, solos, very riffy, kind of an adventurous thing. Are you interested? And he came over and heard some of the stuff, some of the demo stuff we had. And he went, yeah, I think I like this. And so I knew and I'd seen him play, and I knew he was the right guy. Same with Ronk. The first time I ever heard Ronk play, we were trying to do this Bad Company free tribute band, and I thought, this guy actually has something beyond that. I mean, playing covers, yeah, that's cool. I played them. But I'm always looking for something that is relatable in an original setting, but reminds you of something that, like, oh, yeah, man, that really does remind me of whoever that is. Oh, when I listen to that song, it reminds me of Humble Pie a little bit. Man, I just remember Humble Pie back in the day. Or it reminds me of Trower. Or it reminds me of Scorpions when Uli Roth was in the band, or whatever. Oh, it reminds me of Deep Purple. Oh, man, I just really love Deep Purple. And that kind of is the connection between what it is we try to do and been fairly successful at it, and to what I had done in the past or what other people liked in the past. Now, having said that, I'm not in Atomic Kings anymore, so there you go.
Well, that was my next question, is what is the status of that band?
The status is I quit a couple months ago, and my reasoning behind it, hang on, Ryan. There was not enough momentum going forward. No.
I didn't like the guitar player.
No, you know what? We put a record out that I really like, and because of the way the music business is, or lack of music business is, there's so many different bright baubles that come out every week that, we got a nice push right out of the gate. But because we couldn't go on tour, because none of us, we all have jobs, and we're not rich, so we can't afford to go play at the Whiskey. And we don't. Let me rephrase that. We don't want to afford to go play at the Whiskey. I wouldn't mind playing the Whiskey. I don't want to have to pay for it and go on at 6 o'clock. So it just seemed like a lot of work and not enough reward. We were talking to a record company about doing another record, and they were interested in that. It was a different record company, but we would have to pay for our record, pay for the packaging, the promotion, the artwork. So by the time you're done, you're paid $10,000 to make a record. The record company doesn't invest anything in it, and they're helping you distribute it, which we could probably get our own distribution, but we just, when you're an artist, you want to just do artist crap. You want to just write songs and arrange songs and come up with a concept for a video. You don't want to have to worry about getting a distribution deal and all that kind of stuff. So I just thought, to spend 10 grand to make another record that might make its money back, I just didn't think that it made sense to me. And while I liked all the guys and I liked playing with them, I kind of handpicked them to do it. It just wasn't going forward in a fashion that was making me happy, and it was very stressful. Trying to figure out what we were going to do next, and was this going to work, and can we do this? We went all the way to New Mexico to open for King's X. That ended up, we drove all the way out there for nothing because there was logistic problems with the staging and all that. I mean, we got paid. We couldn't go play in Vegas because some problem with our former record company at the venue that you would play at. We couldn't get a gig in there. Like I said, we didn't want to spend $1,000 or more to play at the Whiskey and then go on at 6 o'clock. It just didn't seem like it was going anywhere. I like the music. I like the rehearsal part of it. I like the songwriting. And Ryan and I still continue to write to this day. But it just didn't seem like it was going. I think that I'm only going to say for me, my expectations for what it was going to be was different than what some of the other guys. They thought it was going to be this big deal, and we're going to be on the radio, and we're going to do all this stuff, and we're going to get to go play M3, or we're going to go on a Monsters of Rock cruise. That ain't happening. I'm just a bass player. That I don't have a resume that's powerful enough to make any of those things happen on my own. There would have to be somebody else in the band with a bigger resume than me to make that happen. And that, while my expectations are exactly what it was, I don't think that's what the other guys. I think the other guys thought that this was going to be this big deal, and it just wasn't working for me anymore. Ryan can chime in here any way he wants.
Oh yeah. Well, he was asking what the status is. So the three of us are still a part of Atomic Kings, because we did in fact get that record, the deal that we did with Fire Rock, and so they've re-released the album. So now one of the things that the previous label couldn't get for us was distribution. So that's why we kind of stayed on to promote the record now that it actually has distribution channels available, because it was just a mess. and so it's available at Amazon and Walmart and online and stuff like that. So you can kind of get the CD anywhere, and we're back up on Spotify and all the streaming services too. So we've been just working all that stuff out, because I think Greg would even say that he still is very proud of the record and believes in the record.
Yeah.
So I think it just never got a shake. So the three of us are still kind of making sure the promotions and the promotions team associated with this label is helping us get the word out. Plus, there's going to be a vinyl release that we are working on right now. So,
Great.
There's going to be a vinyl release. So all of those things we wanted to kind of stay. Now, whether or not we decide to record without Greg in the future, that remains to be seen. We haven't even discussed it really. So right now, it's all about like making sure that the Atomic Kings record actually has some ears, that some people can hear it, because the last label really
Dropped the ball,
screwed the pooch, whatever, just couldn't get the distribution channels that he promised. So we're just kind of giving the record its due.
I mean, I'm still part of the Atomic Kings. I have a piece of the record, and so I still am involved in some of the business decisions. Just peripherally, Ryan kind of keeps me apprised of what's going on, and I'm good with whatever they want to do. I mean, if they decide to find another bass player and go do whatever, I quit. So it's not, I can't say, hey man, you guys got a break. That's stupid. So, I mean, I know Ryan and I, Ryan's doing a record. Ryan has a studio, so I've recorded a couple records at his studio. I just did this Freak Show record with Ronnie Borchard and Carlos Cavasso and Sted Howland. I recorded that at Ryan's studio, which is called
Alley Works.
And I did a friend of mine, Chris Bickley, I did a couple of tracks for him. I had a record that I played 5 songs on that came out at the end of last year or the beginning of last year, I can't remember, called Cross Country Driver with Rob Lamothe. And I played on that. Rob and I are old friends. And Jim Harper, the guy that does it, he wants to do some other kind of record, and he wants to know if I want to play on it. And I'm kind of like, well, tell me what it is first, and we'll see what's going on. I'm doing a record for a friend of mine, Greg Mara, a band, I think it's called Plenty Heavy, and the drummer is Jimmy DeAnda. So I have things I'm doing. Ryan and I continue writing. We like writing together. We like the stuff that we come up with. I co-wrote a couple songs with him for the album he's doing with his brother. His brother lives in Illinois. They've never done a record together. It's called The McKay Brothers Hang Out with Greg Chaisson.
Yeah, I've been meaning to talk to you about that name.
Well, that's not going to happen?
Yeah.
Oh, damn.
No. Yeah, that's in his...
Well, Chaisson hangs out with the McKay.
No. Although that would, starts with a C, so that you'd be first in line, got closer to him.
But so I'm doing. So him and his brother have never done a record, so they're doing that. I'm going to play on some of the stuff, and much to Ryan's disappointment. And so I'm keeping myself relatively busy. Like I said, Ryan and I are going to do something. I don't know what it is, and he's got so much stuff in the fire with what he's doing with his brother, and then figuring out what's going on with the Atomic Kings record. And so even if Ryan and I did something separately, it would have nothing to do with any other band. Doesn't mean that any other, if Ryan and I record together, it doesn't mean anything against Atomic Kings. If they record together, they do whatever. It's just you do stuff with people that that you have chemistry with and you resonate with and you enjoy working with. And see what happens with it. If Jake ever calls me and says, hey, want to go do something? I'd probably say yeah.
Do you guys still talk?
Yeah, we text. We only talk if it's something like, in order for us to talk, I have to have cancer. I got cancer. Just talk on the phone. No, just kidding. I told you I'll joke about anything. We text 3 or 4 times a week, but it's never about anything musical, it's normally about just nonsense. Did you see this show? Or check out this car I just saw going down the strip, or whatever. It's just friend stuff, just Jake and I would be friends whether we were musicians or not. We just happened to be musicians, and that's how we met. But Jake and I would have been friends regardless. It's just that kind of thing. Kind of like Ryan. I'd be friends with Ryan regardless. We just met as musicians, but we have a lot of other crap in common. And everybody has friends like that, you meet them from some interest that you guys have, but your friendship is bigger than that.
And before I let you go, the Rob Lamothe record you did, I was going to ask you about it because Rob Lamothe is probably, if I have to pick one singer that never made it huge that should have, it's him, because he's unbelievable and completely distinct.
You would be right.
So working on that record, so that was basically, a gig where you got the tracks and you recorded it in Ryan's studio. Is that how that all went down?
I actually recorded that at a different studio, but they sent me the tracks. They sent me a song. I liked it. Rob has a very unique approach to his vocal stylings that is unlike anybody else's, which is kind of what sets him apart from everyone else. He has a tonality to his voice that's different as well, and I liked him in the River Dogs. That's how I met him. The drummer in the River Dog, Mark Danzeisen, was one of my best friends back in the day. We're still friends now, and he kind of turned me on to Rob, and Rob and I Rob was a huge Badlands fan, and so when I did my solo record, I needed someone to sing The River, which was the song I wrote when I was in Badlands still. And I tried to sing it, but it didn't, I had the original version where Ray sang it, and it didn't have anywhere near the emotion that I wasn't capable of portraying that kind of emotion. And I thought, I know who could do this. And I called Rob up, and he came down and sang it. And it's funny because he had his little son with him, and they came down. We hung out in the studio for the day, and he cut the track, and Mark Danzeisen, the aforementioned drummer, sang background vocals on it. It was really great. Came out the way that I would have, liked it to have been. I think Ray had passed on by then, so there was, no way I was going to be able to have Ray sing on it. And I thought Rob did a great job on it. And the trade-off was I was going to play on a record of his. He played on my record for free. I was going to play on his. Well, life happened, and he moved to Canada. I moved here. So when Jim Harper from Cross Country Driver contacted me and said, "Hey, I'm doing this record," first I was like, "Nah, I don't know." He goes, "Rob Lamothe singing on it." I went, "I owe Rob Lamothe a favor." So I said, "Well, send me the stuff." And Rob's vocals were on it, and I thought, yeah, I'm going to do this. So he said, "Well, do you want to play on more than one song?" And I said, "Okay, well, here's what that costs." And we made a deal, and I played on 5 of the songs. And he wanted me to play on more. And I did those 5 tracks. I liked the way that they came out. Rob's a great singer. I think the songs are cool. They're not like anything else. It's not a very easy record to define. It really covers a lot of different ground. It's got some 80s in it. It's definitely got some 70s. It's got some folk sort of thing in it, some hippie thing in it, some hard rock guitar hero stuff in it. And the funny part of that thing is the little kid that Rob brought to the studio when he sang on The River on my song is the now grown up kid that plays drums. I think he's on the drummer on at least 2 of the tracks that I'm on, and I'm drawing a complete blank on his name. Damn it. Sorry, Rob.
Is it Xander?
Xander. Thank you. Yeah. And so he was the little kid that Rob brought to the studio, and here it is X amount of years later, and he's a excellent, accomplished drummer. And I always found that kind of ironic. So now Rob owes me because I played on 4 more songs than he played on.
There you go. All right, Greg, thank you so much for coming back on. This is brilliant. You always have great stories to tell.
Oh, thank you for having me, and hopefully I didn't piss anybody off too much. But if I did, whatever.
And that was Greg Chaisson. Hope you liked it. He's always a fun guy to talk to. So next week's episode is already recorded. It's with author Greg Renoff to discuss Van Halen Rising and the autobiography of Ted Templeman. Until next time, I'm Brian Sword. Thanks for listening.